Welcome to episode 3 of Concepts, Customs, and Really Rare Cars. We've hit the year 1940. Despite World War II raging and worldwide tumultuousness, there were customs and concepts being released at this time, although a much lower number than non-war years. So before we get to 1940, let's jump back to 1913, which was the year the luxury British automobile manufacturer Aston Martin was founded. They would produce their first car in 1915 when World War I would totally throw a wrench in the situation and cause both of the founding members of Aston Martin to have to engage in the conflict. By 1922, when they had returned, they changed their focus to want to generate cars that would compete in the French Grand Prix. And those efforts would produce several record-setting cars for the time. As the years beyond that progressed, Aston Martin would experience a variety of financial concerns involving multiple bankruptcies, being bought and sold multiple times, being reorganized, and by 1936, Aston Martin had reconcentrated on making production road-going cars, which is what they began producing. As they were really getting into the swing of producing production vehicles, this thing called World War II would kick off. They would be requisitioned by the British government into producing aircraft parts, although some development of automobiles would still take place, and the vehicle we're going to discuss today is that exactly. In 1939, construction would begin on a prototype Aston Martin that was commissioned by R. Gordon Sutherland, Aston Martin's managing director and the son of the owner, Arthur Sutherland. Nepotism! Anyway, the goal of this car would be to be a saloon or sedan-styled car that was to be lightweight, highly comfortable, and handle extremely well. The resulting prototype would be the 1940 Aston Martin Atom. A-T-O-M, Atom. See, at the time, fascination with radiation and nuclear energy was increasing, although it was prior to the Manhattan Project and atomic weapons. So the idea of an atom was associated with something that was small, but also very powerful. This commissioned vehicle was not intended for production, which would actually make it Europe's first concept car, and maybe the first 2 or 3 concept cars in automotive history, if we're considering the Buick Y-Job started production in 1938 as the first. Despite not being meant for production, this vehicle would result in 27 patents being filed, including for its engine, chassis, and other technologies. So as a lot of people know, all vehicles at this time were body-on-frame construction, where you took a ladder frame where it's 2 beams with cross beams and you stick the body on top of it, bolting it there. The Atom's chassis was a little bit more complicated than that, and it kind of evades pure classification. It featured square and rectangular cross beams of metal tubing that would be intended for the main chassis and supporting foundation. This has been titled as either a skeleton frame, tubular monocoque, tubular unitary body, or space frame construction. So it really falls somewhere between body-on-frame, unibody, and monocoque construction. It also was the first Aston Martin with an independent front suspension, and there were a lot of advancements used in the non-independent live axle rear suspension as well. It had a 2-liter inline-4 engine, single overhead camshaft that pushed out 83 horsepower, which was relatively high for the time. It had a semi-automatic Codal transmission and a max speed of 110 miles per hour. Wrapping this all together, including aspects of the chassis, aspects of the design, and other things used in this vehicle, there were a lot of airplane inspirations to it, including the hammock-style front seat, the sloping shape of the external construction, 24 slits in the bodywork of the vehicle that would cycle air through to cool the engine rather than the standard front grille, and that chassis that we described from earlier. But what happened after it was done? Well, R. Gordon Sutherland simply used it as a personal vehicle. That's where it was. But in post-war Europe, after World War II ended, Aston Martin again fell on really tough financial times. It was not a great time to be in the luxury automobile industry. The company began looking again for another investor to lift the company out of the doldrums. They turned to Sir David Brown, English industrialist known for his managing of his family's gear making and tractor manufacturing company. Unsure if he was going to make the purchase of the company or not, David Brown was asked to try some of Aston Martin's products, and he was given the Atom to drive. Brown later said, quote, "I liked it so much, I bought the company," end quote. So he did in 1947. And the first production car of Aston Martin after his acquisition was what was called the 2-liter sports model, which was an adaptation of the Atom. It used a similar chassis and the same exact engine. Aston Martin would continue to release new models after the 2-liter sports model as successors to it, the first of which being the DB2, David Brown 2, which then kind of labeled the 2-liter sports model as the DB1, despite it not being called that. This line of DB vehicles under Aston Martin would become one of the most recognizable and celebrated series in automotive history. The DB5 would appear in several James Bond movies, including 1964's Goldfinger, 1965's GoldenEye, 1997's Tomorrow Never Dies, 1999's The World Is Not Enough, 2006 Casino Royale, and 2020's No Time to Die. All of which being Bond movies, but it would be featured in dozens and dozens of other movies and video games, especially featuring cars. All of that glamour and luxury can be traced back to the Aston Martin Atom, the grandfather of them all. So what actually happened to it? Well, Sutherland continued to use it as his personal vehicle until he sold the vehicle in 1949 and had already put 100,000 miles on the car. It bounced around owners until 1965 when previous Aston Martin driver Nigel Mann would purchase it and keep it with him in France to be displayed at a variety of places. Then, in 1986, Tom Rollison would purchase it to be refurbished and bring it back to where it belonged, the United Kingdom. In 1996, Mr. and Mrs. Gordon Sutherland were given the opportunity to see and experience the car again in a grand reunion. And in 96, it would appear on Top Gear as well. So as of now, as far as I can tell, it is now on display at Mansion House in Bletchley Park. And that brings us to today. The Atom is one of those vehicles that a lot of people know its legacy, but don't actually know the vehicle itself. So I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed the history of the Atom. My name is Mitchell. I'm here at Fred Haas Toyota Country, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks a lot.